All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I know it's been a very, very long time since I've thrown any content out there, but here I am today throwing you some content. In case you forgot, you probably didn't, but just in case you did, as always, I am your host, A Train. With me once again is my good buddy Darrell, also known as D Money.
What up, y'all?
We're going to be talking a little bit about the college football world and how crazy it's gotten since, football's right around the corner. Figure it's probably a good time to talk about it. News has broke that Texas, the University of Texas Longhorns, and the Oklahoma Sooners have agreed to leave the Big 12 and join the SEC. Although they wouldn't be able to do it until 2025, the agreement is in place, and yeah, we're gonna talk about it, give our thoughts and all of that on it. So why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Alright, so the television deal that is set to expire in 2025, I have a feeling that it's not going to last that long, that they're going to ultimately pay X amount of dollars to the Big 12 in order to leave early, because that's not going to be a very comfortable situation. I feel like it's going to be like Maryland when they left the ACC, when the ACC just said, hey, just give us this money and get out. That's the same with Texas and Oklahoma.
Here's what I'm feeling on it. I think that due to the new NIL agreement, which for those that don't know, that's name, image, and likeness, colleges and the NCAA have come to an agreement that kids are now allowed to profit off their name, image, and likeness as they never could before. I think that has most everything to do with it. Because the NIL has everything to do with money. This move has nothing to do but money. I don't think it benefits either team. Honestly, I think it actually hurts them going to the SEC than staying in the Big 12, and I will explain why in a little bit. But yeah, I think the NIL is really going to start changing college football, and this is just slowly starting to get to the effects of it.
You can go ahead and elaborate on that.
So I think if I was the SEC, the last two teams I'm calling is Texas and Oklahoma. I'm sorry, but I'm not calling them to come join my conference. Texas hasn't been relevant in God knows how many years, and Oklahoma is decent, but the Big 12 is known to not play any lick of defense, and now you're going to a conference that plays nothing but defense. We've seen how it works when Oklahoma gets matched up against Alabama, gets matched up against LSU, Auburn, and those guys. It never goes well. Same thing for Texas, especially recently. It hasn't gone well. So I think them joining for both of them is good from a money standpoint, but from a athletic standpoint, and it's not great just because neither have been that good.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's like you said, it's all about money.
Yes.
I mean, Oklahoma, they have been the Big 12 for like the past 5. They're the only in the Big 12 to make it to the college football playoff. And they're the only ones who are trying to put up a fight, even though, yeah, defense is just horrendous. But hey, at least they can say they got there.
And yeah, they wouldn't be the first two teams to join from the Big 12 either. If you remember correctly, years ago, Texas A&M and Missouri both left the Big 12 to join the SEC. It worked. The first few years it worked, and then now look at them. A&M still trying to build off their success that they had. And ever since they've beaten Alabama that one year with Johnny Manziel, they just haven't been that great. They're good, they're not great, and Jimbo Fisher's not a bad coach, but you just expect them to be better. And then Missouri has just been a dumpster fire outside of I believe they won the SEC East the first year, and then that was it. It's been a dumpster fire ever since. I just feel like this is the exact move that's going to cause the exact same thing. I understand, though, Texas and Oklahoma, they're big names, so bringing them in, like we said, from a money standpoint, you get big money matchups. You get Texas, Alabama. You get Texas, Auburn. You get Oklahoma, Auburn. Oklahoma, LSU. Oklahoma, Alabama. You get big money name matchups. And that is what I think the SEC was looking for more so than anything, was that big money matchup. And because football's so big in the South, you might as well take the two best teams in the South and that aren't in the SEC and bring them into the SEC. I think just for football, I think it'll be okay. Basketball, I think it works a little bit better because I think both schools are a little bit better in basketball. I think overall, I think it's going to take them a few years, especially Texas, when you're rebuilding the way Texas is rebuilding. Now you're going to have to wait even longer and hold off the rebuild even more. And in college, it's not exactly easy to rebuild, considering you only got the players for 4 years, and then you got to bring in a whole new group.
All I can say is Greg Sankey, commissioner of SEC, is the smartest guy in the room right now. He's ripping some Scott. He just literally changed all of college football.
You're right, he did, but
Big Ten, Kevin Warren, they need to do the same thing. They need to expand to not 16, but 20.
And we'll get to that in a minute. And I think this will have a domino effect on the rest of the conference. But yeah, like you said, the SEC commissioner is pretty much playing chess, not checkers right now. But I don't think that Oklahoma and Texas were two teams I would have added. If I was the commissioner of the SEC, I know they probably don't want to leave, but I'm doing everything I can to get Clemson on the phone and getting Clemson to join the SEC. Because the last decade or so, Clemson has been very, very good. You call Clemson, there's your money matchups. You got the rivalry of Clemson, South Carolina. You got the kind of the newly rival that has appeared between Clemson and Alabama. You got a national championship rematch, Clemson LSU. You got Clemson Auburn. That's the big money matches that we want to see. You know, those are the big money games right there. I understand Clemson probably doesn't want to leave the ACC because why would they? They own the conference right now. Nobody is on their level. But
some can argue maybe Notre Dame. Should they actually get off their high horse and go with a conference?
So here's the thing with Notre Dame. Notre Dame, the only reason they haven't joined a conference yet is because of their TV deal with NBC. And Notre Dame's not going to give up the TV money to join the ACC or the Big Ten, which I think they should join the Big Ten, but I would understand if they joined the ACC. I would much rather see them in the Big Ten. I think it helps the Big Ten out more, geographically at least, than it does the ACC. Notre Dame, until their TV contract with NBC doesn't get renewed, they're going to just stay independent, and they have no need to leave independence.
Yeah, but if we're talking geographically, I mean, look at West Virginia in the Big 12.
Well, yeah, but
that makes no sense.
That was only because the Big East went bye-bye. Anyways, moving on. So this, yeah, like I said, would kind of cause a domino effect into the rest of the conference, because now you've had Iowa State and Oklahoma State reach out to the Big Ten, which Oklahoma State, realistically, geographically, doesn't make sense that they would be joining, or not Oklahoma State, but sorry, Kansas. You've had Kansas and Iowa State reaching out to join the Big Ten, which Kansas joining the Big Ten kind of does nothing. Doesn't make sense geographically.
Rutgers.
Well, Rutgers is New Jersey, though, so at least geographically it kind of makes sense. But Kansas doesn't really make any sense at all. Iowa State, at least, you have Iowa in the Big Ten, so adding Iowa State's not that big of a deal. But Kansas, if Kansas were to join the Big Ten, I think basketball, it would be fantastic having them join the Big Ten. Just another powerhouse in the Big Ten Conference for basketball. Football, they belong nowhere near the Big Ten. They're like Rutgers. They don't belong. They deserve to be in the MAC.
The only reason why Rutgers is because of that New York, New Jersey market. And also, remember, they want AAU universities to join. That's the Association of American Universities, the top 66 schools in the entire country out of the thousands of colleges. Iowa State, I believe, are a member of the AAU. Kansas, they are. Yeah, Iowa State is a member of the AAU. I don't believe Oklahoma State is, but they're good in both basketball and football, so they'll make an exception.
But
my thing is, let's take geographics out. If I'm the Big Ten, I go and get 6 big-name schools. I take a couple from the Pac-12 because Pac-12 is dead.
That's not true, but that's the thing with this move with Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC is how does it fit into the rest of the other Power 4 now? Because with the Big 12, this is pretty much the end of the Big 12, I believe. With the Big 12 crumbling, being a Power 5, how does this affect the other Power 4? Does the ACC pull the trigger, and does Notre Dame pull the trigger and they join the ACC? Does a team like Kansas State, who really nobody's reached out to, or they haven't reached out to anybody, do they try to join the ACC? You know, does West Virginia try to join the ACC? Does Oklahoma State try to go, and Kansas State, Texas Tech, do they try to go join the Pac-12, make it the Pac-16, you know, and they'll have like a northern division with Colorado and all of them? Or the other option that I could see happening is, not that it would make the Big 12 any better, but they could reach out to teams like SMU, they could reach out to North Texas, they could reach out to, you know, teams like that, make up for Texas and Oklahoma leaving. Obviously, Texas and Oklahoma being the two biggest names in the conference, you're not going to just easily replace them, but you could grab teams to try and fill the void. A Houston, maybe. You know, you could try and grab the void, try and fill the void with team to keep the Big 12 alive instead of completely getting rid of it. Cincinnati, I think, would be fantastic addition to the Big Ten if they move to a power conference. The Big Ten would be a fantastic addition for them. They're too good for the MAC. The American Athletic Conference is a very underrated conference. This domino effect is going to be very interesting in the next few seasons to see how it all plays out. Like I said, Iowa State and Kansas have already reached out to the Big Ten. Big Ten being 14 teams, Big 12 being 10 teams. Apparently, none of them know how to do math.
Eventually, it'll just be one big super conference of 32 teams.
And then Notre Dame would still be independent. And Notre Dame would still be independent.
They'll find a way to do that. If I'm Big Ten, I'd reach out to Baylor.
Nah.
Because you're talking about basketball, too.
Nah. I think what's going to happen is, I say this is going to be the downfall of the Big 12, but like I said, I think the latter is going to happen. I think they're going to reach out to SMU, which is right here in Dallas. They're going to reach out to Houston. They're going to reach out to SMU. They're going to reach out to, you know, teams like that to try and fill the void. They could even reach out to a team like Colorado State to try and fill that void in the Big 12. You know, Boise State they could reach out to. They could reach out to, you know, they could start going west just a little bit to try and fill the void in the Big 12. You know, that is going to depend on, okay, if Oklahoma and Texas officially are joining the SEC, what does that mean? You know, you got to wait and see what happens, because if Iowa State and Kansas leave, okay, there's two more big names. Now, how do you replace them? Or does the Big 12 just completely collapse like the Western Athletic Conference did back when the WAC was a thing, and then everybody moved and that became completely extinct? Does something similar happen here?
I think the Big 12 is no more.
I think I would agree. I think that Oklahoma and Texas being the big money markets in your conference, them leaving pretty much, and then if Kansas leaves, signal it dead. Because Kansas, maybe not so much for football, but if Kansas leaves and basketball goes down, that's just a powerhouse that you just can't cancel the Big 12 at that point. But we really won't know until we get more word on what the rest of the teams are doing. I just know that rumors and reports have that Iowa State and Kansas have reached out. I don't know what the rest of them are going to do. You know, this really plays a lot on the rivalries going on. That's why moving Texas and Oklahoma is okay, because you still have that. But how does that work out for Oklahoma State? You know, how does that rivalry work out? You get Texas. You get Texas moving to the SEC to renew the rivalry with A&M. But now, how does their Texas Tech rivalry get affected? How does their TCU rivalry get affected? You know, this is things that I don't necessarily think that they were thinking about, more so than thinking about the money.
Yeah, that's all it came down to, was just money. They didn't care about the other guys. It was every man for himself. What if, all right, say it was towards the end of the Big Ten, and Ohio State said, well, we're the only ones that keeps this thing going, and SEC reaches out, because there are rumors that they reached out and said, hey, you want to come?
Yeah, so that report was fake. There was a report that said Ohio State, that the SEC reached out to Ohio State, Michigan, Clemson, and I forget the other team. But yeah, that turned out to be a completely false rumor. That was just speculation. I think Ohio State would do well in the SEC, but I don't think it makes any sense.
SEC, they're trying to get all the big name, big teams.
They are, but you also have to think the way they're doing it is they're also doing it geographically. because they're adding Oklahoma and Texas, which aren't that far from LSU and Alabama and Georgia and all of that. Texas to LSU is about 8 hours. Ohio to LSU is much longer than that. It's about 17 hours. So geographically, it makes a lot more sense doing it this way, but it's going to be interesting to see how the snowball effect really trickles down on everybody else in the conference.
Well, they all have planes. They can just charter their way down there.
Yes, but most of the time, the way most of the conferences are set up is geographically they're all relatively close to each other. There are some exceptions, like Penn State being in the Big Ten makes no sense. Maryland being in the Big Ten makes no sense. I don't know why Maryland left the ACC to begin with, but that's neither here or there. Texas and Oklahoma are making big moves. There was rumors that the SEC could generate just by having these two. And with the NIL agreement in place, they could generate $1.2 billion a year, which is more than what the NCAA would make. So, at what point will the NCAA step in and be like, look, this can't happen. You can't make more money than us. Though I think they should, because the NCAA has had their fair share of, terrible motives and things that they do. When one singular conference is making more money than the entire NCAA, there's an issue there.
NCAA, this will be the end of them too in the next couple of years. I mean, they were completely inept and irrelevant last year when COVID broke, and it was horrendous. It was just conferences were like, all right, we'll coordinate this thing ourselves.
Well, the NCAA was like, yeah, you guys aren't playing, and the SEC said, look, whether you like it or not, we're playing. The Big 12 said, look, whether you like it or not, we're playing football. It was the Pac-12 and the Big Ten were like, what's the decision, guys? What are we doing? And that's why I said, they said that they wanted to play, but that's why I said that football's so big in the South that they'll literally risk their life to play football. Regardless, you could have had freaking swine flu, coronavirus, the Black Plague, whatever, could have came down the entire South, they'd still be out there playing football. You think that would have stopped them?
You ain't gonna stop it down in the Dixie.
Exactly. They were gonna play no matter what. And then, as time went on, the NCAA didn't do anything, and Ohio State and Nebraska were like, look, you guys don't want to make a decision on us playing, we'll go gladly join the SEC for the year so that we can play. Not sure Nebraska would have wanted that smoke, but they're like, look, we'll do whatever it takes to play. And then, they put the guidelines in place and all of that. And then we got a season, but the NCAA obviously has had their issues with exploiting these athletes for a lot more than, that they get. I understand, both arguments of getting paid and not getting paid. I personally don't agree with it, but I do think they should be getting paid for autographs and such, which is why the NLI is in place. And I think this whole Texas-Oklahoma thing will, not only snowball on the rest of the conference, but it will really change the NCAA very quickly, and we won't even see it coming.
Well, I think change is already here.
I think change is alright, but I think the change has to be done correctly. You can't just add, 20 teams to the Big Ten, 20 teams to the SEC, 20 teams to the Pac-12, and then 20 teams to the ACC and be like, look, have fun. That's not how it works. You have to have a plan in place. You can't just have all these teams reaching out to join these conferences, creating super conferences with no plan, Especially with only a 4-team playoff, it might be time to revisit that.
There are talks of the playoffs are going to get expanded. Eventually, it'll potentially 12, maybe 16. SEC is looking at it like, hey, we need to fill up these gaps.
I know, but what I'm saying is you have to have a plan in place. You can't just be like, yeah, Oklahoma and Texas, you can join the SEC. Kansas and Iowa State, you can join the Big Ten. Baylor, Texas Tech, you guys can join the Pac-12, and blah, blah, blah can join the ACC. But what is the plan? You can't have all these teams join power conferences and just have 4 playoff spots. It would never work.
The plan is just getting more. They don't care how.
Yes.
They don't care how they
expanding
do it.
the playoffs, which we can talk about later, expanding the playoffs will also increase money. That's why I'm saying they have to have a plan. You can't just be like, oh, we're going to generate X amount of dollars, but then, at what cost? College football already doesn't have enough eyes on it watering down the product, only having 4 teams with all these super conferences is only going to water down the product more. You need to have a plan in place to get eyes on the product. I mean, I understand the big money matchups are the ones that people watch and the ones that you get, and that's why expanding the playoffs to get the even more money matchups is good for everybody involved, the NCAA, the conferences, etc., etc. Yeah, so Texas and Oklahoma joined the SEC. Personally, I love Texas joining the SEC because they're going to compete with Tennessee and Vanderbilt down at the bottom there. I think Oklahoma is the big money matchups they're looking for. Horns down, Boomer Sooner, all of that. Thank you guys for the patience waiting. I know, like I mentioned in the very beginning, it has been a long time since I've thrown any content out there. Appreciate you guys sticking around, waiting. Make sure to watch this episode, and I'm going to try to start being back on a weekly basis, throwing content out there for you guys. I have a lot to talk about. That was another episode of The Train Station. I'll catch you on the next one.